This is Christine. I'm back with Jeff Burbank. We're moving now from journalism onto his books that he's published. And I was actually there when you were writing License to Steal. It's kind of a historical novel about Las Vegas. And then you wrote The Babylon.
Las Vegas
I
Babylon.
love the title, Las Vegas Babylon. That was a couple years after License, though.
Right, right.
And you also, which I was surprised, but we had lost touch, you had two books with photographs. Are they vintage?
Yes, yes.
That should be. Let's talk about the your first book, and is it pretty much? A lot of people have written books about Vegas, but I think you were one of the first notables to really pull a book out like that. So tell us a little bit about the premise of License to Steal.
Well, while I was a gaming reporter for The Sun, there were a lot of really fascinating stories here.
I bet.
And this was, there was corporate ownership of casinos, but there's still really a lot of individuals, and interesting individuals. And there were a lot of controversies. And in the late 80s, you still only had Atlantic City and Las Vegas, and then some Indian reservations with casino gaming.
Right.
And so there was a lot at stake here, and there were a lot of interesting stories I was covering. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to keep my reporting materials and try to write a book about it. And I did. I wrote chapters on different major stories that
Were they
I
really
covered.
stealing?
Well,
so
you
to
know what?
speak?
There were some people that didn't like that title.
I loved it.
And since this was about gaming licensing,
Okay.
I thought it was about
yes.
a license to steal, because obviously people who make the money in gaming are the ones who own the casinos. And that was the be all and end all in gaming, and with the Gaming Control Board and the Gaming Commission, which I covered. Was obtaining that license, and it was very difficult to get for some
I
people.
understand that. I know somebody personally who got. I mean, they go through everything, including the hamper. You know, where the
Right.
dirty. They'll find whatever is going on.
Right, and if they catch you in a lie, that alone can
Ooh, that-
mean
yes.
you don't get licensed. So
And we're talking even a white lie, right? I mean,
Right.
there's no gray area when it comes to getting a license like that.
right.
Interesting. So that moved on Babylon, the Las
Right.
Vegas Babylon. What is that?
Well, you know, I got kind of cynical living here for a while, and I got a little
Happens.
tired of the hype. And there were I really liked the book Hollywood Babylon, and so I thought, well, why not Las Vegas Babylon? Because there are so many similar kind of scandalous stories about Las Vegas. So I decided to compile that, put that together.
So it's a
And-
series of stories about certain scandals. Is there one that just pops into mind that you might want to quickly share with the viewers?
Well, the whole story about Elvis Presley and his drug abuse, and how he got his prescription drugs, many from his doctor, way too many, while he was at the Las Vegas Hilton, almost like a Hughes figure at the Las Vegas
Well,
Hilton.
certainly was.
And he got all these prescriptions from the small drugstore at the Landmark Hotel across the street.
It was just that small little
Yes,
drugstore. Who would have
yes.
thunk?
And I mean, he.
But a physician prescribed them.
Yes,
Yeah,
but he was Elvis, so he got what he wanted, and he was really overprescribed with a
That's
lot
a
of
darn shame.
addicting prescription drugs. But I mean, like, he fired his gun in his hotel room, and it missed his girlfriend, and he came out of a near fatal overdose, and
Wow.
and so
Kinda-
the details about Elvis, who I really liked. I was a
Right.
fan of Elvis, but
Right.
unfortunately, I don't think he was,
Well, he was
done
a-
right by his doctor.
Right, or a farm boy, which he was, being thrown into the limelight.
Right,
Was
right.
got to be kind of hard. Not kind of like a Michael Jackson thing, but Michael was brought up around all that, in a family of all that. Yeah, but he had a private physician. So, what about we do want to get to the Mob Museum at some point, but this is so much fun. So then, now after those two books, what made you decide to do the photographic? Is it like a photographic history of the early
Right.
days?
Two,
and
two books.
two separate.
One was called Historic Photos of Las Vegas, and black and white photos about Las Vegas really goes
Love
up to
them.
the 60s, but from the beginning around the turn of the century.
The dam and
when
everything.
right, and even before that. I mean, in about 1904, 1905, there's no air conditioning. There was hardly any water.
I know. I think about that.
And there was
Those
one.
Quonset huts and how hot really out by the dam. People must have died by.
Well, even before the dam, when there was just ranch land and there were maybe 3 dozen people living here.
What a hard scrabble life.
They brought out the railroad, and for you to relax, they would have a tent put over a stream that was about as wide as you are, and you take off your clothes inside the tent, and then you lie down in the stream, and they give you a towel, and then there was a little cot for you to lie in. So that's how you relaxed back then, because it was so hot.
Oh, I know.
Yes.
I think about that. It's going to be 105 this weekend, folks. But no, I think about that. And when I drive down to San Diego and I'm looking at the vast arid land, how they came across there in covered wagons. Really, we have to give all due honor and respect to our ancestors and those that were before us.
And what one old timer I talked to would tell me 1935. I believe he said 1935 or it was 34. I said, "What does that mean?" And he said, "That's when air conditioning came to Las Vegas."
Whoa.
And there was one place, or a couple places at least. There was the El Portal Theater downtown. You could go in there and just cool off because, showing movies. But then he said, and then. They got swamp coolers and things like that. But he said before swamp coolers and air conditioning, what you would do is on these nights where you couldn't sleep because it was so hot, you'd put sheets in the bathtub and soak them. And then you'd take your pillow and put a blanket down on the front lawn.
Wow.
And you'd wrap yourself in the saturated sheet.
Right.
And then you'd fall asleep by the time that the sheet was dry.
Wow.
So that's how they comforted themselves. So there
They
was a
would
lot of
have
outside
to,
sleeping
yeah,
back then.
and even when you look at the weather, sometime there were some record-breaking temperature spikes,
Sure.
20, 30 years ago. Well, and those pictures of that are in the book?
Yeah,
Of how people...
pictures of how the town started as clapboard with one block with allowed brothels and drinking, and then the other blocks weren't allowed that. Block 16 and block 17. And
are there captions that for each picture? I haven't seen the book,
yes, there are
unfortunately.
captions on each one.
So there's a little history there,
Sure. And then you see the progression of, the 20s, you had card games that were allowed, and then there was some other illegal gambling going on. But then when the state legalized gambling in 1931, you saw an explosion of small casinos, small clubs downtown. You saw one club on what we call the Strip now, and things started to take off even more when the Hoover Dam was being built in the mid-30s.
I'm getting us to the mob.
And then the mob started coming in when they
mob.
saw that this was a state that allowed casino gambling, but they weren't willing to invest in it yet because it just looked too hard scrabble and just wasn't much of a tourist attraction. I mean, it was there were a lot of divorcees coming in, and because you can get a divorce in 6 weeks, as probably a lot of people know.
Yes.
And so that brought in people. Really, what brought the mob in was when Bugsy Siegel and Mo Sedway came in 1941, when the state passed a race wire law allowing for race results to come into Nevada, and you can bet on race horses and horse races in other states.
That's interesting, and that kind of, I'm sure you probably, because you aren't the psychic that I had on Mystic Mona, had no idea probably 10 years ago that you would actually become an integral part of the Mob Museum, which we're going to talk about. We have a break here coming up, and your other book is the other.
That came out last year called Lost Las Vegas, which really has a lot more color pictures of. And it's
further in the timeline.
Yes,
closer to the present.
Right. Buildings that no longer exist, casinos that no longer exist.
Great. People are going to love that. All right, folks, we will be right back with the very informative Jeff Burbank, and we'll be talking about the Mob Museum and what's coming up there this week. So this whole month. See you in a minute.